Okay, folks that are joining us, welcome. We're gonna kick off in a bit, but if you see the question on the screen or it says who is one fictional boss you would work for, you can go ahead and drop your answer in the chat, and then I'm gonna ask my panelists who are joining me today. What do you all think? Who's a fictional boss you would want to work for? I'll go first on my hot take. Okay, sorry. Mine is Miranda Priestley from The Devil Wears Prada. I know she seemed awful to work for, but I was honestly inspired by her. Her tenacity. I loved it. She also just good fashion sense, I was about it.
I'm gonna go with like a Michael Scott. I like it. I think that I've had some crazy bosses in the past, and I think they add some they give you some some good life skills. So
For sure. I actually love Michael Scott, honestly. I am a weirdo who loves The Office to this day, and I still watch it.
Mine is Olivia Pope.
Oh,
dude, she's a badass. She be knowing everything. Her coats are always so spot on.
But you might die because a lot of people who report into her ended up getting murdered.
Well, I think it's worth it. That's the way to go. It's the way but I'd be knowing some stuff if I'm gonna die. Taking secrets with me. Like, oh yeah. I love her.
I would say maybe like this is also maybe a hot take, but what about like Ari Gold on Entourage? I feel like
yes, he's another
just
one.
entertainment wise, it would just be fun to be a fly on the wall in that environment.
Totally.
He's the straight shooter. I like it.
Yep.
Like,
he's direct.
Tell me what you think. Exactly.
What he's thinking.
I am loving the person who said Albus Dumbledore because I have been on a Harry Potter fanfic reading kick lately. And I also think I would work for Dumbledore at a school for magical children. My dream. Come on. These are so many good answers. A lot of Leslie Nopes too. And love for Ari Claire because Ari, I've never seen Entourage. I only know of Entourage. And I can imagine that would have been a fun time. He's their agent, right? Did I get that wrong?
Yeah, he's like a big agent.
I feel like I would have so much celebrity gossip that it would be hard for me to like not tell my friends all the celebrity gossip. But guess what? It'd be terrible. Okay. Clearly, as always, my intro question could be a whole segment in itself about all the managers we'd want to work for. I'm loving that the chat is popping off. Welcome to HR Therapy. Let's get into it. Today, we're talking about firefighting to future-proofing AI and HR. And this has been a highly requested topic, very hot. I see some people saying it's their first time. Welcome if it's your first time to this event. It's going to be a good time, and I can't wait to get into this with my panel. So before we dive in, I have to tell you a few things. This is being recorded. Don't worry, your chat never is recorded. It's just me talking. What a treat for me. The chat can be very distracting. So if you get distracted easily and you don't want to make friends and you don't want to chit chat with people, I would close the chat now because this ends up being one of our most engaged pieces. It's also a lot of fun. So I'll be monitoring it. Don't worry. And stay at the end for some surprises about what's to come next in our next HR Therapy episode. So those are just reminders before we dive in. Now, what are we all doing here? If you haven't been here before, it's HR Therapy. You're going to meet my brilliant cast and crew. They're here. We're going to do a segment called Dear Hibba and Friends, which is a Q&A that we have crafted of questions around AI, HR, and challenges we're facing. Then we're going to do a live Q&A. So if you have questions that are coming up while we're talking, there's a QA button right underneath the chat button, and you can actually submit your questions there, upvote ones that you desperately want answered, and we will get to them during this segment. And then we'll wrap with what's next. So who's joining me today? Here's my brilliant cast and crew. Sarika, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, excited to be here again. And I'm so excited to see how many first timers there are. You are in for a treat. You'll be back for sure. I am Sarika Lamont. I'm the Vice President of People at Vidyard. If you don't know who Vidyard is a video-based tool that allows you to do video hosting, video messages, AI avatars, and AI prospecting. Though we might position ourselves as a video-based tool that's often used for sales and B2B sales, I also use it in recruitment, and I also use it for communications, and there's a whole AI component. Check it out. Super excited to be here and talk more about AI and HR.
Thank you, Sarika. Amanda.
Hello, everyone. Amanda Halle here, coming to you from New Jersey. A couple weeks away from welcoming twins into my life. So if I sound out of breath when I'm talking, it's because I am. And then on the side, I'm a fractional HR executive. I started my own practice about 4 years ago, Mindful Growth Partners, which specializes in fractional HR leadership, HR, and business advisory. And the latest area is AI speaking and education. I've been in the HR people space for the entirety of my career, both building companies, consulting companies, operating inside companies, and have just become fascinated by the everything that AI, generative AI specifically, has brought to the table. And so I've really focused on how can I demystify this for HR and people leaders. And so I started a newsletter about a year ago called Unraveling AI. And so I'll share a bunch of learnings from that newsletter in this conversation. So super excited to be here.
I'm so happy you're here. Amanda's one of the first people that I noticed on LinkedIn that was talking about AI and generative AI in HR, because I'm always curious to have HR people's perspective on stuff. So Amanda knows I'm a big fan of hers, and Sarika, of course, yours too. But I'm so happy you're here as well. And then finally, last but not least, Claire.
Hi, everyone. My name is Claire Schmidt. I'm the founder and CEO at AllVoices, and we have built an all-in-one employee relations platform that is in many aspects powered by AI. So really excited to be here for this conversation. I've spent pretty much my entire career working on tech for good and trying to make sure that tech is always used for social good and for positive purposes. So really excited for this conversation.
Love it. Thank you so much for joining us, Claire. I can't wait. Okay, so, oh, I should introduce myself. Wow, there are so many first-time people here. I just didn't even think about it. I'm Hibba Youssef. I'm the Chief People Officer at Workweek. I'm also the founder and creator behind I Hate It Here newsletter, podcast, and this HR therapy event series, as well as a community of over 350 people, leaders. Actually, we're way more than that now, called Safe Space. So if you are looking for a community of HR of like-minded individuals, you can join us in Safe Space. That's a ton of fun and a good time. When I'm not doing HR therapy, I'm actually doing HR stuff. So I'm pumped to get in and have this conversation today about AI, how we're leveraging it in HR, and what it could mean for the future of the work that we do. So let's get into it with Dear Hibba, Sarika, Amanda, and Claire. If you ever read Dear Anne growing up, it was an advice column that I had no business reading at like 8 years old. But every Sunday I would run and get the paper and read this advice column. And that's what actually inspired this event and this event series. So fun fact. Before we get to that, I want to make this a little interactive. This is especially fun for our first time people here. We're going to do a quick poll. So I'm going to queue up the poll, and I want to know, how often are you using AI in your day-to-day? You can scroll down, there are a few options, and then you vote, and we'll see what the general consensus for the group is. Also, Renee, thank you for knowing who my Dear Anne lady was. I hope that was a real person, honestly. Okay, once you vote, we can see. Once you vote, you get to see the results. That's really exciting. Wow, okay. A few times a week and every day multiple times is really the majority. My boyfriend Chad is up all day. Okay, Jessica, we joke. Okay, so our joke is we need to ask our third team member, because there are two of us on the people team. And we're like, we got to ask our third team member, ChatGPT. That like ends up now becoming a joke that we're like, we'll assign it to our third team member, ChatGPT. But I'm dying that you named him Chad. Okay, this is cool. So I'm seeing very few people saying never or rarely. So that's really interesting. Majority of us are saying every day, multiple times, daily, but only occasionally, and then a few times a week. I love this. Everybody
I love
is.
that. I love that there's so many people, HR folks, using it. Because if you remember, Hibba, when we were at Transform earlier this year, and we were in that room, and they asked for how many of you in this room are, using AI, and like there were not a lot of people that had their hands
No,
raised. And I was in complete shock, because I can't live without my Chad. How about that, Jess? It's my Chad.
I love that everyone has been naming their ChatGPT.
I didn't actually name Chad, but I'm just trying to see if Jess caught that.
I'm literally dying that it's Chat Gilbert. People call him Chatty. This is great. If you give your ChatGPT or whatever you're using a name, please let me know, because I'm going to collect them now. Okay. We can move on to our set of questions now. Okay, let's get into it. I have a few. I want to start first at a high level view and just talk about common challenges our HR teams are facing to kind of set the stage as to why we're having this conversation today. So, panelists, what are some common challenges HR teams are currently facing?
So I can kick things off. There's so many, but I'll start with, I think, just from like a bird's eye view. There's obviously all this talk about HR people, whatever you call it in your organization, needing to be more of a strategic partner to the business, aligning your people strategy with your business strategy, right? But yet we are given limited to sometimes no resources to be able to actually execute that very big task. And then oftentimes, and I hope this is changing, it's not my current experience, thankfully, but oftentimes HR does not have a seat at the table, such that they're not in the rooms with the rest of the executives talking about the business strategy, day in and day out, week in, week out. So they often don't know what is going on in the business, but then are somehow expected to figure it out, and which is hard. And then it's like damn near impossible if you're not in the room really understanding and having the opportunity to talk about the people and HR side of things that may or may not be contributing to the business strategy. So I think it's really difficult to expect us to be a partner without giving us the actual resources, letting us have a seat at the table.
Love that. And I feel that so strongly in my soul. The resources thing really gets to me, especially if you're at an early stage startup. We all have heard there's no budget or resources are limited. And I think that's where I also really struggle too. Claire, anything to add?
Yeah, I just want to echo everything that's already been said. I hear this all the time. And the way I hear it is from our advisors and our customers. The amount of work, like relative to the resources, is just massive. And I think that's actually something, as we talk about later, AI can help with. Um, I also think that ends up leading to like reactive work in general, where it's just like firefighting. Um, and I also think that the point about inclusion at the table is so critical, because what's more important in your business than your people, right? And if the person who is chiefly responsible for people is not included in executive leadership and strategic decision making, like how can the company be strategic in its approach to working with employees? So just want to echo all of that I've heard. It it's so common that it would be like, it's very rare when someone says to me, "No, actually, we have all the resources we need. We have our part in the decision making. We're a part of the group." Like I almost never hear that, sadly.
Isn't that wild? I said this on a webinar, I think like 2 weeks ago. I said, I'm tired of asking for my seat at the table. It needs to be cemented. My seat is already there, cemented with like it's a throne. My throne is there at the table, because what you said about people being so key to the strategy and the success of the company is so true. And so how can we actually act on anything if our seat isn't already just guaranteed there? So I love that you shared that, because that is super important. Amanda, what are you thinking about challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I would just add, seat and access, right? Like in the world that we live in now, where we're kind of either remote or hybrid, or, how do we even get the information, right? Like oftentimes we're just like, we're cut off from that information. And so it is just like it's this constant dilemma of like, how are we doing more with less and less and less, and adding more hats into the mix without getting more time or money or resources. It's it impossible at the end
Yeah.
of the day.
Less hats, please. I don't want to wear any more hats. I would like one hat, and I would like to not be so in firefighting mode. And so I think like one of the things we've talked a lot about is how AI can actually help us go from the firefighting to the proactive. And so I'd love to hear from you all. How is AI actually impacting you personally?
I'm happy to start off. I think I would say that I've kind of always been a like practically minded person, and when I say practical, I like very data driven, numbers driven, and I have a finance degree. I actually thought I was going to go into investment banking, ended
Cool.
up going into client services, which kind of led me into HR. But I've always like been really curious about how we put more data behind the decisions we make as HR leaders. And so I would say when I've been interested in AI and I would say natural language processing for a really long time. I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But when ChatGPT came on the scene, I became very curious and just wanted to start to share my learnings with folks. Um, Back to kind of natural language processing and quick tangent, but the idea of that is giving machines the ability to read, listen, and respond in a way that feels natural, like talking to a friend. And an example of this is going through employee feedback and summarizing it, and coming back with something like, my team feels that communications and promotions could be more clear. It's interesting because I think when these large language models that are behind ChatGPT and Claude were built, there were no specific tasks in mind. And so the idea was really to just improve natural language processing. And so that is different than how a lot of us think about these chatbots as a way to solve a task. And it's very different. And so I think we have to kind of train our minds to think about these things differently, and focus on what you can do with natural language processing versus like a very task specific tool.
Yeah, I love that. And also, I was just thinking about so many things as you're bringing that up that's just going to make me chat you after this because I have so many follow up questions on that. Because I really was hesitant to use ChatGPT. I was hesitant to use any AI at first. First of all, I kept thinking about like Terminator, which I know is not where we're going, but like I was like, Terminator, Skynet, like this is very real. And I see somebody saying that they were also against it at first. And I felt the same way until I started asking ChatGPT questions. And what I have found is my ability to ask clear and concise questions and actually get to what I want to say has improved in the last year substantially simply by interacting with ChatGPT. That's just been like one of my key findings is like now I'm even better at asking questions, which at first I was like really terrible at it because I wasn't getting the answers I wanted. So I would then like reiterate and like clarify, clarify, clarify. And now I have found that I'm the best at asking questions and prompting it to do things. So that's just a little thing about how it's impacting me personally. Sarika, what about you? You've been such a fan and talked about this so much.
Yeah, well, I was definitely hesitant at first as well. I think not unlike a lot of people, especially my husband is a big sci-fi reader. So when this first started like hitting the scene, he was just like, I told you this was gonna happen. Oh my God. I was like the future. I'm like, it's okay. But because I work in an organization that was building AI, capability into our tool and our platform, my CEO talked about it all the time and talked about no, you got to like reframe your thinking, like also think about the value that it's actually bringing you. And so like ChatGPT, and I know this is more than just ChatGPT, like AI is much broader than that now, but it is my best friend. Like really like I use it all the time, every day. But I think like what I'm seeing, and I know we'll get into like, there's so many AI tools that are coming about and it's hard to know like where to invest, but in some of the AI tools that I'm using, it is allowing my team and I, because now it's actually moving farther beyond into like a more agent or, there's co-pilot and then there's agent, which are actually two different things really. But what it's allowing me to do is to automate away those sort of tier 0 and tier 1 tasks that are just, they're important, but they're not value add in the context of building connection with the people in my organization. So being able to maybe not hire a people ops coordinator anymore and using that a lot less money to invest in different tools that I'm using that is automating some of those elements away, or adding an AI chatbot inside of Slack to answer questions coming out of Confluence, which is like where we host all of our documentation. I get to spend more time with the people in my organization or with customers solving real problems and driving real value. What my obviously immediate customer are employees, but ultimately my job and my team's job is to enable and empower our employees to drive greater customer value within our own products. I feel like my team and I are able to do that more and really spend time being more of a strategic partner, because ChatGPT takes away the like, I'm not starting from a blank sheet of paper and I'm trying to think of something. Oh, maybe you could just like save me an hour by like figuring out how to prompt something. I'm like, oh yes, okay, this is great. And then I use that not as the product, but I use that as an input to go build the product that I'm building. But it saves hours, sometimes weeks, depending on what we're talking about. So I love it, but it definitely took me a second to figure out how I was going to use it and how I was going to empower my team to use it and not be fearful of it.
Yeah. I think, oh God, there's so much love for that in the chat, and so many people are talking about also being sci-fi readers and feeling the same way, Sarika. So I feel like that resonates with so many people. And then I think from Claire's perspective, Claire, you're building software in a time where like AI just it feels like it exploded in the last like 1 to 2 years, even though we know it's been around much longer. Like, how is that impacting you and your role as a CEO?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost hard to remember a time when we didn't have it, which feels so crazy to say because we really started actively using it like in our tool and then also ourselves at work last February. So not very long ago, but it's fundamentally changed what it means to build software. I think in the old days, if we can call 2022 the old days, we would build software in a very specific way to help people complete a specific task. And it was super rigid. And so everybody had to do things the same way. And if they wanted to do it a different way, we had to like kind of hard code a change for them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And this is just complete, like there's basically infinite flexibility with AI. So what we've done is to build AI into our product such that the way that each customer uses it can be vastly different and can really meet their needs and conform to like their policies and their practices and their standards. And it can take, like Sarka was saying, so much busy work off their plate that's just inherently a part of employee relations work, and free them up to do the things that they actually love to do and got into HR to do in the first place, right? They didn't get into HR to build spreadsheets and to analyze data. And like, I never heard that before, right? Everyone says they love people and they want to make a difference. And so by using what we have seen as like this major like step function change in technology, for the benefit of our customers, we're just seeing like huge improvements in their own ability to free up time.
I
You,
love
Claire, something that you said that was really awesome about like creating, building an AI into your product such that your customers can use it in the way that makes sense for them. That's the whole concept of like AI personalization at scale. And oftentimes I think people are getting mixed up on what personalization at scale means because we get this pushback with our own product is like, well, how is it personalization if you're taking the human out of the loop? I'm like, but you're not necessarily taking the human out of the loop. You're taking them out of the loop in those sort of like they're important activities, but maybe they're non-value added activities in the context of what you're trying to, like what outcome you're trying to get to give you back more time to bring the human connection back in the moments that truly matter, that are going to drive more of that end value. And I think that is like a concept that we're seeing a lot more companies talk about, but it also allows you to like curate, whether it's learning, whether it's to your point, what you're building inside of AllVoices, what does your customer actually need? And like, that's what's going to inevitably drive the most value to your customer because they can decide how to use the product.
Exactly. Exactly. Like we originally had an investigations product, just to give an example, that kind of took people through a structured workflow of how to conduct an investigation. What we know is that everyone conducts investigations differently based on their own company's policies. We basically are allowing them to go through a very custom process, but then the AI is supporting them along the way. The AI is writing the summary report at the end of the investigation, which everyone hates doing, is what I've heard. Um, and just offering it up to them for review before they finalize it. So that's the kind of thing that you can now do that you just couldn't do 2 years ago.
I love that you mentioned that because that leads me to my next question brilliantly. Like we've done high level challenges, high level how HI is impacting us personally in all of our various roles. But I want to talk in the weeds about a specific example of how AI is being used to help HR people actually shift from this reactive firefighting thing that it feels like all of us are in all the time to an actually proactive role to build culture and employee well-being. Let's kind of start there. Claire, I think you gave the example with the employee relations, but anything else to add there?
Yeah, I can definitely share. I mean, I think um, we did a ton of research. We've always done a ton of research along the way in building all voices. And when it comes to like employee relations issues and investigations, I know that they're incredibly emotionally draining above all else. They're also time consuming. They require like legal expertise, and the stakes are so high if they go wrong. And that's what I heard over and over. So they end up becoming very time consuming and expensive for the organization. And so in addition to like building a product that basically takes so much of the busy work out of that process, we also really thought about like, okay, now that we have AI built into this, what else could AI take off of people's plates that
Mm,
was being done manually before? So like researching specific laws or regulations, knowing the employee handbook at each company forwards and backwards and being able to make suggestions based off of the handbook, making sure that recommendations at the end of the investigation are consistent and fair across the company. So if person A did the same thing as person B, they're getting the same treatment. These are all like really, really good use cases for AI. So I think just being able to free up our customers so that they have time to be communicating with employees, to be keeping them in the loop about things, to be able to um, refine their communications. I think it makes for a much better experience for the HR person and also a much better experience for the employee who is involved and all the employees who are involved in something serious like an investigation.
super helpful. Think those are all really great examples. You were talking about handbooks, and I was like, oh, I could think because like you always have to search them. Some place you have to like search them, figure out what is it that was actually our process or policy, or what did we say in our handbook, and how is that person going to react to that? So I love that example too. And especially investigations, everyone does do them differently, and kind of having a framework or something to guide you through it is very dreamy and less than intensive for us to be have to like jump in and then figure everything out very quickly. Amanda and Sarika, how are you all using AI in very specific ways to kind of shift that approach?
Yeah, I was actually gonna just kinda, like, piggyback on that. I think the context is, like, this big bucket that, that these AI tools, like Claire's tool is giving folks, right? Like, you're capturing all this information, and that data is then becoming context that your organization can use to inform how you handle, right,
Yeah.
future investigations. Um, I I have a few common use cases that have come up from the kind of unraveling AI data. I actually did a little bit of analysis with ChatGPT, my sidekick, and the things that most that came up most frequently. And I think that these are all ways for us to be more proactive versus reactive, right?
Yeah.
I think, comms enhancement. So being able to draft, edit, improve communications, right? Because we are, like, I think in HR in this current environment are like comms building machines. We just have to be. And whether it's speaking to our teams or it's writing emails, it's messages in Slack, all across the board. And I think that AI is an incredible tool for that. Um, it cuts down the time you're spending doing that from like
Yeah.
hours to minutes. I think meeting and note management and being able to really transcribe, um, capture action items, recaps, another way to like actually be able to have more of the side conversations be captured. So it's giving more transparency and also helping you to remember and capture important things that you're working on. The other is research and information synthesis, so summarizing and pulling key insights. So from things like feedback, employee engagement, performance reviews, uh, there's so much data that we gather from all of those processes, and so we can use all the help we can get to distill that down to what is most important for us in the organization. And I think last is just um, less on like the tactical, more on kind of thinking big picture, like strategic planning and brainstorming. You can use AI as like a new set of perspectives, right? You can ask it to, play the devil's advocate or to give you four different sides to a story. And so I think that the idea is that it can be a way to not only like brainstorm, but to give new ideas that you might not have thought of.
Yeah, I used to tell the story about how in the beginning I would ask ChatGPT how to do something, and then I would fight with it basically for like hours on end. I'd be like, "But I don't do it that way." But like in HR team that does this or does, I was like fighting with it. And then someone was like, "You've been training ChatGPT every time you fight with it, right?" And I was like, "Sure, sure." But it actually like opened up my mind because I would have like a little fight with it before, and then I would get all my questions in a row and all my answers in a row, and then I would go present something to my CEO. having already like fought with ChatGPT on it, I was like, great. Now ChatGPT has told me all the things, all the opposition I'm going to get to this idea. Now I actually know how to take myself better into the next conversation and actually get buy-in for what I want to get done. So like I love that you mentioned all those ways. That's like one very specific way I use it when I'm vetting new ideas. I'll ask ChatGPT what it thinks or what are common objections to the idea I have.
Mhm.
And then I will actually use those objections to then formulate like a story to get better buy-in with my CEO for an initiative. So that's like, I honestly just use it as a thought partner a lot of times too, because it'll tell you like what's out there on the internet and what's wrong with what HR has done in the past. Sarika, I know you have some examples too. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, so we've used, Chat GPT for like even in our engagement surveys. I know like the product that we use has embedded AI into the product, but sometimes I want like more. I want more sort of like context, or I want more takeaways and insights. So we will very careful, because there's a lot, by the way, there's a lot in the chat box about like being very careful, like not fully depending on AI and Chat GPT, like the data that you get,
Of course.
not putting in like, company proprietary data in there, because now you've just trained it on your company's data. So you have to be very mindful. So like when I'm thinking about, when I use engagement survey results, like I take away any of the like personal identifier, any type of characteristics about that would specify a person inside of my organization, and look at it as just like the data that we were given. And so we use that, we create that sort of version and input it into ChatGPT. And it's all about the prompt at the end of the day. Like, and so I'll ask like very specific questions. I'll ask it to summarize, okay, like what's the overall sentiment analysis that you're gathering from these engagement survey questions? What are some key takeaways in each of these question areas? What would be like some recommendations on how to the actions that we take as an organization? And I will tell you that in and of itself, with the engagement survey, has saved us like easily, a week's time of, trying to get this analysis done. And what it's done now is we can use ChatGPT, we can use the system that it's in, and it allows us to spend more time with our managers and with our leaders talking about the data or the insights that we got and potential recommendations of actions that we can take, so that we're spending more on like, okay, great, we have these really clear insights now. What are we going to do about it? How are we going to solve for that? Because at the end of the day, that's what drives the value, is like what we're actually going to do to action against that data. So that's a really big like win for us, that I've seen some like really a lot of saved time. Also, like I mentioned, like I believe in video because I need it for communication. I'm in a remote first organization. And so like, but I'm also able to use our own product, AI avatars, that allows me to just like write a script. I might even use ChatGPT to help me write part of the script. I put the script in, it automatically records the video because I've trained my avatar, and I can actually send that to my teams. And so now I'm not having to spend a half an hour recording the video. I know what I want to say, but sometimes it's harder to just like speak and like record the video because I got to look perfect and I want to put on makeup, all the things that people get hesitant about being on like camera. I could just quickly I can do it from my phone. I trained I actually wrote a script with my avatars. I remember this in May because I was a little late getting to our company's offsite, on my phone's app while I was in the middle of Disney, like watching the fireworks with my daughter. I would have never been able to do that otherwise. And the video was amazing. And I was able to communicate to my entire organization, why I wasn't there. And then like whatever my message was for that. Like because communication is like is the foundation of connection, right? But I'm able to do that in a way that's still me, and I'm writing it. I still have the message, right? And we also use it in recruitment. A lot of times you're hearing recruiters say, I don't have time to get back to all of these candidates. I don't have to. Okay, great. Well, like use the power of like an AI avatar to like record video follow-ups with people. It's still you. You're able to give them very clear information. And now you no longer have an excuse to say you can't follow up with a candidate and let them know where you are in the process. Like that's a way where it's not about bias, because I'm not implementing it in the recruitment process in the context of like giving me insights about the interview necessarily, which there are amazing tools that do that and are very conscientious about bias. But it's a way to communicate and have more touch points and think about your candidate experience at the end of the day as a reflection of who you are as an organization. So that's like another way in which I use AI. There's the CEO of HubSpot actually posted something right after they had their big marketing conference Inbound that I thought was so powerful about AI. And she says, AI creates, but people curate. AI offers context, but people offer connection. AI handles simplicity, but people handle subtlety. And I just found that to be such a powerful takeaway about the power of AI to help sort of like minimize fears in people on like, you're not taking the human out of the loop and you still
Yeah.
can connect with people, but here's the power of AI to make us be more human. And when she just sort of like laid it out like that, I like honestly had goosebumps because I'm like, this is a perfect way to articulate that. Now I know there's a lot of other things around that. There's acceptable use policy, there's a lot of the tactical things around that, but if you really think about AI from that context, I think it's pretty powerful to sort of help to like, I think, minimize maybe some resistance and drive some of that change management inside of your organization to sort of articulate the power of AI.
For sure. And then some people are asking you to share the link to that quote. So if you can,
Yeah.
that would be
Yeah, I will
that's
do that.
phenomenal. And I think like a lot of us here are HR leaders in organizations, and we're also thinking about how do we enable and empower AI within our organizations. So I'd love to take a few minutes before we get to live Q&A. We will get there, I promise. Keep putting your questions in there. But Sarika and Amanda, I want to hear like, what do you think AI's role is in enabling AI within their organization?
Yeah, I think happy to start, but I think that, it shouldn't be HR's job alone. Again, I think this is a major partnership across the business to really build out I think first your stance and philosophy on AI use, and being crystal clear about that and what you how you plan personally to use it, and then communicating that philosophy across the organization, creating opportunities to experiment and model using AI in your day to day, if that is in fact what your policy and philosophy and stance um, align with,
Yeah.
because I think that it's people don't resist change, they're resisting loss, and people I think are afraid of what AI is going to bring to the organization. And so you have to make sure that you're being really realistic about how it's going to impact roles and skills and people and the organization. And so I think that can be done by modeling the behavior that you want to see. It can be done by experimenting. You could create your own internal newsletter that showcases how people are using AI. Celebrating and incentivizing being a power user, right? Like I think you have to think about what behavior you want to see and what are the ways that you're really going to be able to drive that. It is a change management initiative at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think to like recap, really defining the policies around it, making sure that people understand how it's being leveraged, and then also sharing more context are really important things. I want to get to our next two questions because we're getting a lot of Q&A, and so I think people really want us to answer that stuff too. So let's get to challenges some HR teams may face in adopting AI.
I'll start. Just really quickly, like HR is just a very high stakes part of the organization. We know that if mistakes are made in HR, they can have serious ramifications. I don't need to tell all of you that, but I would just say that when a company is planning on innovating in the HR space, they have to approach it with such thought and care. It's just different than building like a marketing tool. And I'm not disparaging marketing tools. But if it's done right, I think the benefits can be huge. So I think just be aware on your ends of companies that are sort of like barging into the space and claiming to have like this great idea that will save time, but it's actually just a chatbot. And all the security and privacy hasn't been thought through. That would be like an example of something I would flag. Um, and look for companies who really are doing fully integrated AI. It's trained to automate tasks, and they have a deep understanding of all of the risk factors that HR has to deal with day in and day out.
I love the call out to risk because that I think is we tend to be a risk averse like department and function. And so I think that's kind of like one of the biggest challenges I've seen is people are so afraid of the risks that they just don't engage. And I think it's like, no, but this is an amazing tool. You can definitely use it here. And I love that. And I think we'll get to more challenges when we get to the live Q&A. Our final question that I wanted to ask the team is a little bit of future. What do you envision the HR function will look like in a future where AI is integrated into all these aspects, from talent management to employee engagement? We haven't really touched on recruiting, but I know a few people in the chat have chatted about it. I would just love to hear like what we're thinking about in the future. Claire, please, like you're building this. So I'm like so curious to hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about this for 5 hours, but I won't. I just think like high level, I think every single person who works in HR will have some type of assistant or companion that's working with them throughout their day, that knows them, that is basically doing all the work they don't want to do or don't have time to do. So you get to work in the morning, your assistant has surfaced all your high priority issues. It keeps a list of what you're doing and what's done, what's not done. It drafts emails, it summarizes data, it responds to repetitive questions. Like the idea is that in this world, you can spend all of your time focusing on strategic issues and connecting with people.
Claire just describing my fantasy for HR in the future. Amanda and Sarika, what do you all think?
Yeah, I
I
think
guess. Oh, you go first, Amanda.
you go.
Okay.
Okay, so in addition to everything that Claire said, I think, being able to handle all the stuff that I don't want to have to schedule things. I want all my recaps to go to people automatically. I want like goals to be clearly. I think that I also want to be able to surface all the best data in easy to read dashboards. And so I think that that's like could look like company health dashboards, team health, manager health. I do think there's still a lot of work to do and work to go here because structured data can be the biggest hurdle. It's still this whole like idea of garbage in, garbage out, but I think eventually we can get to a place where we have the data to be able to give us these dashboards and then allow us to have the right conversations with our teams, with our managers, with our executives to really inform the right things in the business.
Love that.
Yeah, and I guess I'll share like this sort of goes back to personalization at scale, which I think is just like such a huge benefit that AI is already starting to drive inside of organizations is the ability to use AI to develop curated learning, like development plans, learning paths that are specific to the individual and not just this like, catch all like, oh, if you want to learn this, just take all these courses, but it's like it's skill agnostic, right? I think the power of AI is being able to really use it to leverage, okay, what are my skills on this particular thing? What else do I need to go and develop and curate a learning path according to that? And I think that would be amazing. And I think would be super helpful for, I'm sure, for a lot of L&D professionals to be able to do that. And I think that's that power of like curation and personalization that we heard Claire talk about that AllVoices is also doing inside of their product today.
Love it. The future looks bright. Just kidding. That was my attempt at corny inspiration, and I will never do that again. Let's go live. Let's go to live Q&A. Okay, let's talk about that. Let's take some questions. Here we go. If you've been submitting them, you can also upvote them. And then let's start with our first question. So you can just remember you all can upvote. How is AI helping automate some of our manual tasks like reporting and insights? Amanda, I think you touched on this one too.
I would say that, there's a lot of tools out there that have these components built into them. So when you think about companies like, I don't know, like Lattice and Culture Amp, right? Like they are pulling insights and reporting based on lots of qualitative data that they're gathering. And so I think that is helping to like surface the most important things that you can work on as an organization. I'll stop there and see what Sarika and Claire have to add.
Claire, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, just really quick, I think AI can kind of do whatever you need it to do, and it kind of comes down to which tools are you using and how have they integrated AI into them, or are they like pure AI? I think I think one thing that we're doing throughout our product is making sure to flag things for people so they don't have to go looking in the data to find an answer to a question they may have. It's getting surfaced to them proactively, and then they can dig in if they want to dig in. That's one way that we're helping with that.
I love that because you're just filled. There's like so much data. Sometimes it's hard to get those insights. So having kind of a call out, I love those things that tell you like, here are the words that are most commonly being used, and then you can figure out what is actually going on. I'm a sucker for a good word cloud. Hopefully that was helpful. Our next question, this one I'm so curious about. How do you manage the usefulness of AI with data privacy concerns from stakeholders and employees?
I can talk about this because I'm actually like our de facto data privacy officer
Cool.
somehow. Um, Basically because I care a lot about this. I think it's really important. And one of the things that we were talking about earlier with just throwing questions into Chat GBT and making sure to sanitize those questions before they go in, that's something you can do on your end. What we do as a company is that we actually are like a buffer between you and any like um, LLM. So we aren't giving your data back to the company to further train it. And I think that's like one of the best things that the buffer companies provide, like ours, is that you can put any sensitive data into our tool. That's what it's built for. And then we will make sure none of it gets back into ChatGPT, OpenAI, right? So I think that's one way to really easily ensure that no matter what you're using, um, you are thinking top of mind about data privacy.
Yep. I always remind any of our managers using ChatGPT, I'm like, do not in a public open thing be putting any sort of information about our company or direct reports, like any of that. And I think also just trying to make sure everybody is aware of the risk. If you're not using a tool like AllVoices and your managers are just out there using any open AI tool, making sure they understand this is a useful tool, but you should not be putting private data in there. Amanda and Sarika, anything else to add?
I think it often goes back to your security and privacy policies, right? Like this is just an extension of those. And so making sure that those are super clear and up to date on the latest in tech and making sure people know what
Not
they
to
what
be
they
silly.
say.
That's a good question. This next question I'm also incredibly curious about. Ethics in AI. Can any of the speakers address where this is headed from an HR perspective?
This is
That's
a
a
tough one. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead, Claire.
I was just going to say it's a really tough one. I think it's just something that everyone needs to have who is building in this space. We need to have it top of mind. It shouldn't be placed on you all to try to deal with this on top of the million other things that you're doing. So it's like the people who are building in my belief, we are the ones who are responsible for understanding all of the ethical implications of the tools that we're building, understanding where there may be issues like bias coming in and how to combat those. And then obviously the open AIs of the world need to be doing their own work on ethics. But I think like I mentioned before, how we're sort of the buffer in between, that goes for the ethical side of things too. We can develop our own ethics practices that then support you all in knowing that you can be confident having a product that is built ethically.
That's amazing. Sarika, Amanda, anything you want to add?
I think Claire answered that beautifully.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Claire's building it. So like
I was
she
gonna
knows.
say, she's in it. She's building it.
She knows.
But Claire was building tech for good.
Yeah.
And
A lot
we
of
just
people
need
aren't.
more CEOs and founders like Claire who believe in that philosophy of building tech for good and not just for profit.
I actually wish that this was like a bigger conversation we were having. Everyone remembers the engineers from Google that got fired for speaking out about this. And I think it's us just continuing to make sure that we are aware of how we are using our tech and what does ethics and AI actually mean. I think more people will think about it. I think a lot of HR people, because we are like a risk based industry and function, I think a lot of us are already aware of the risks of using AI. And I think conversations like this one, hopefully, will never be the last one we have, but that there are a lot of tech out there that want to have this conversation because it is really important. And I think we as HR people are probably like way more aware than your average person.
Mhm.
And so I think like us continuing to question the tools we're using, how they're leveraging our data, what does it mean for the output, will continue to be really powerful in pushing us into like a more ethical space of using AI.
It speaks to like having more questions. There should be more questions. I think we have to have more questions than answers at this point. And so it's how do you ask the right questions, I think, to dig into the like the real nitty-gritty of it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
This one's a great one too. Aside from Claude and ChatGPT, what are some of the best AI tools to automate our HR processes? And can you give a real world example of how to train the AI tools? Are there any courses to take? That's a double whammy of a question.
Yeah.
Let's start with the first part. Best AI tools or favorite AI tools.
Well,
Sarika.
I mean, I guess, yeah, outside of, well, so, I let's see. I mean, there's definitely different tools that I'm using that sit inside different platforms. Like, I'm using Kinfolk that is building. It's basically like a people ops coordinator agent that'll allow you to do like all my pre-boarding and onboarding, everything like meetings get scheduled on its own. We don't have to necessarily go in there. We're getting insights back, within the platform. And then how do we like action that? Like it has like a chat bot inside that you can sort of like ask specific questions to, but like I've seen chat bots where you can like ask a question and then it's just sort of like pulls from like your Confluence or your Notion. But what they're doing is more of like a engaging, like this person needs an employment letter. Okay, what are the specific elements of it? This is what I have in our HRIS. Is this, confirm if this is accurate? Like you can have like a back and forth conversation on some of those tasks, like I said, that are tier 0, tier 1, that you can just have your chatbot, your AI agent do that for you rather than you don't even need a people ops coordinator because they're able to do. So that's one tool that I'm using. We're not using this tool, but we've been, actually, that's not true. We have a few seats because we use Greenhouse as our ATS, but Bright Hire. And I saw someone ask questions on like, what are you doing with recruitment and like recording videos of the interview and then using that to take notes and then input into scorecards. Bright Hire is a tool that has been able to do that in complete partnership with Greenhouse, such that it's recording, it's giving you AI summaries, it's answering the questions that you have in your interview plan, and then it's taking that and inputting that into a scorecard. Now, obviously, there's still a step in there where the manager or the person that's the interviewer should go in and validate the information to make sure it is accurate. But the amount of time that it saves, like how much I have to chase managers to fill their scorecards, and even me, like even I have a hard time when I'm interviewing getting my scorecards in and like really providing like thorough data that we need to make decisions and really solid hiring decisions. But that's another tool that we've demoed and we're starting to sort of use inside of our organization that I think has been really wonderful. And obviously lots of conversations and questions that they've been asked about bias and how they're mitigating bias in how the tool is summarizing. And so like that is definitely something that they have been tackling. And, I think they have a use case in there to talk about.
Very cool. Amanda or Claire, any best AI tools?
I'm biased.
One
I've
cool
talked
AI
a lot
tool that
about voices, so I'll let Amanda go.
just one to add, the ones Sarika mentioned are awesome. Sana is another cool
Mhm.
AI tool that has an awesome LMS, and then they have an AI assistant agent component that they've recently added, and they really focus on helping to build, more personalized learning paths, and they have been very AI forward, and I think in a very responsible way as well. And I've been just testing out their AI assistant, which is very cool, and similarly connects to all of the systems and documents that you use in your organization to be able to help surface information, and it's been pretty cool so far.
I love that. I think best is objective. Obviously, we're all sharing our favorites. Claire, I know you're biased about AllVoices, but like, can we talk about AllVoices for a second? Like, can you tell us
Yeah.
what it can help automate? Because I like from an ER perspective or employee relations perspective, that to me is incredibly alluring. But what else?
Yeah, so basically we've just built AI throughout the entire product. So we already had a product. I started the company in 2017, started with just a employee reporting tool and pulse surveys, and then over time added all these different features in. And all of those, basically the decisions we made, I saw someone mention like we need to have more HR people involved in building tools. I completely agree with that. So I built an advisory board of HR people from the very beginning to advise us on what to build next and what to build after that and what to build after that. Then we also have a customer advisory board. So I think it's really important if you're going to be building tools for HR to have a seat at the table for HR um, in the development of those tools. And then the way that our product works is that you can input any cases you have, like any employee cases or any reports you get from employees. Those get input into the system. Data from pulse surveys are into the system. Then we start to build out dashboards for you with data. And then there's a layer of AI on top of that. That's basically telling you, like, here's what's going on in your company from a
Mhm.
people perspective. So I think the best tools are going to be the ones that already had a value add even before AI existed. And then AI is just this like really, really high value add layer on top that delivers insights, but then also over time allows you to customize your tool and the way you work with it every day.
I love that. I was thinking about this question as you were talking and like automating processes. And yes, automating processes is great. But I actually think if you were to ask me like where I find more value in AI, it's surfacing the things that are happening that like we don't have the time to think about. And there's so many times where I have like a gut feeling that something is happening, but I don't actually end up knowing it until I run an engagement survey. And then I have to spend another week analyzing all the things in the engagement survey. And then I'm dying underneath all the time that it's taking me to get to this root gut feeling I have. And so I think like recently I've been more in the camp of use AI to surface the things that like I don't have time because we get so many data touch points throughout all time. Like we do 30, 60, 90-day surveys, pulse surveys, a yearly engagement survey. I'm like, that's so much data that I could have a tool to help me figure out where should I actually focus versus automating my processes. And there are processes that I think are worth automating and leveraging AI to do it. I just think if you were to ask me, I would probably put more effort into like discovering things at the organization because that's what's going to help me go from reactive to proactive. Where I'm going to catch things before they become issues, which is the whole reason we have this event. A note on courses to take. I think we can follow up and maybe share one. We have about 4 minutes left. I have one final question if we just want to get to it, and then we can wrap up. How are people whose companies are adopting AI solutions on a daily basis balancing that with CSR policies? I see its usefulness, but can't get past the environmental impacts I'm learning about. Any thoughts, Amanda, Claire, Sarika? Corporate social responsibility. I imagine this is
I
about the
think,
one. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, I can talk about this too. I think about this all the time. I think being really strategic about where you need to use AI and where maybe you don't can at least help offset the environmental impact. Because I don't think anyone would say, okay, there's additional environmental impact from using AI, so no one should use it, right? That's not going to work. But do you need AI as a part of every single tool that you use? Do you need the AI feature upgrade for every tool that you use every day? No. So it's actually about what you were just saying, which is like figuring out where it can be most useful to you and where you don't need it, and then using it in the places and the times that it's useful to you, and then doing the things the normal way the rest of the time. I think that's one way that you can offset it. And then I'll just once again put the responsibility back on the companies who are building with it. So making sure that they're, getting, for example, using solar energy if they can, or using like other forms of renewable energy to power their AI platforms, because I just think we are the ones who need to be thinking about CSR. And it's great if you do, that's an added benefit, but you're not responsible for limiting the environmental impact of our tools.
I love that. That is a brilliant spot to end. Thank you, Claire. And I'm just so thankful and honored that you made time to be on this event today. That wraps up our live Q&A. I have 2 more minutes, just a few things to tell you, like what to expect next. A quick survey. It'll be in the event email that comes after this. Our next episode of HR Therapy is December 11th, and it's actually called Holiday Therapy because holidays can be really stressful. And so I'm working to get some mental health professionals to help us talk about how we take care of ourselves during the holidays and how we take care of our employees during the holidays, which are incredibly stressful. Some quick final takeaways. Just want to say thank you. Thank you to Amanda, Sarika, and Claire for spending this hour with us, sharing their expertise, sharing their knowledge. And Claire, just big thanks for what you're building at AllVoices. It's always wonderful to hear from CEOs when they're building things, but to hear how you're approaching something so intentionally, I think just, I don't know, gives me a little bit of reprieve in the world that there are CEOs out there that want to do the right thing. And I can breathe easy knowing that there are people who care out there. And so I'm just so thankful for you spending time with us, for AllVoices, for all the amazing things that you all are putting out there. And you're getting everyone's getting a lot of love in the chat. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Claire, somebody asked in the Q&A, they want to know your superhero origin story. So maybe for another day we do that, because everyone wants to know it. And Sarika and Amanda, thank you. Amanda, congratulations again on the twins. I hope the next few weeks go great.
Little twin AI
Thank you
babies.
all.
Thank
Hope not.
you everyone for
It'll be
spending
real.
yeah. And if you want to join us in Safe Space, you can use the code HR Firefighting and get 25% off your membership. So join us in Safe Space, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye, everyone.